Alright guys, TacticalRab again, so I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A shocking revelation last night after all the speculation around the Seattle Surge over the last few days into which player is going to be gone. It seems iLLeY is going to end up being the odd man out of the roster. This makes no sense from a pure performance perspective because no doubt iLLeY was their best player at the major by quite some margin. So clearly there is more to this than initially meets the eye. What are the true reasons behind this situation? What has been going on behind the scenes? What next for iLLeY? Who's his replacement going to be? Very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Firstly, I thought this was very unfortunate from the Royal Ravens yesterday, confirming that ReeaL is gone from the organisation officially, right? They're not even kept her on the bench because I guess they know that, they're not getting the visa sorted now. They tried to get the visa sorted. I know that Ben made an interesting point as well, that the issue is, as a team, when you confirm your roster, basically last minute, let's be honest, lots of these teams now, especially Ravens, they don't like to sign the players early because then they have to pay them more money. They'd prefer to sign them as close to the deadline as they possibly can, which therefore means it's more challenging to get visas and all this type of stuff sorted out. So, look, TJ's done a great job. I think the ReeaL can perform much better than he's shown so far. I think he'll get another chance at some point, but his season is basically chalked in the same way that Zero's season was chalked during Cold War with the same thing at Ravens. To be fair, they got that sorted for Zero next year. He turned out to the States and did a killer job on that Ravens team at the start of Vanguard. So it's not like all hope has been lost, but it's obviously not ideal. And as ReeaL says, appreciate Satan Clay giving me the chance this season. Unlucky that I couldn't get my visa in time for Major 2. I'll be back, as Clay says, just sucks, man. In your corner. Hopefully it can work out for the best going forward. There was also a question going around about the future of Cammy. To be fair, there was a bit of debate on this as to whether he needs to change roles again, because largely he's been in that kind of flex role, which to be fair is a very competitive position. If you're not performing in the flex role, that's kind of like that second AR role is pretty much where the Slayers are expected to inhabit, and if Cammy wasn't slaying or Awakening isn't slaying or whoever, they fall under some serious criticism. So Jake Hale and Zinni were discussing this and basically saying that maybe going back to an SMG is the way to go. As Bant says, he ran an SMG for like 70% of the stuff that he did on Cold War, which is, probably true as well. But then again, the AK-74U was a different type of SMG in that game, right? And I'm guessing, I think most of MW19, it was usually, from my memory, he was on the, well, I guess he used quite a lot actually of the MP5 as well in that game, but then again, the MP5 was kind of the god gun. So it goes both ways. Maybe something for Cammy to think about though, to be fair. It seems he's now playing with the Boston Breach Academy guys, as we talked about just yesterday, but we've got to dive into the Seattle Surge situations. They came top 6 of the major, which was, on paper, that sounds like a pretty reasonable result because you're not expecting to get top 4, top 3 with the teams that we have at the top side of the league at the moment. But I think they were quite lucky really to get top 6. They won a couple of game 5s. Ravens should have beaten them. Boston probably should have beaten them. They just won a lot of search and destroys. And there was one man who I think we can just about see on the left-hand side here, who was responsible for lots of those S&D victories, but he may no longer be in the team going forward. So Zuma heard the other day that Surge will be making a change, but it's not going to be for RCT. So we kind of went through the analysis on this. It's like, okay, RCT isn't going anywhere. Which other player does it make any sense for? Getting rid of aBeZy, we talked about it yesterday because there was some talk about it. Didn't really make any sense to me. It's like, this rookie's just come into the team. He's probably only going to get better and better. He's done reasonable things on the role that he's in so far, but arguably put him on like the proper AR role that he wants to run and was great at last season in challenges. He's probably going to be even better. Unless there were questions about comms, then, aBeZy going anywhere didn't really make any sense. Getting rid of Hook also makes precisely 0 sense because he's your only SMG. And if you're going to get rid of Hook, who are you going to get in instead? There's just not other options out there with the caliber of Hooks. And that doesn't make any sense either. iLLeY also doesn't make any sense from a performance standpoint, but I think I even said this when we first talked about it, that if you did have to find a reason why one of the players not RCs is getting benched, iLLeY is the player that you can create the best reason for based on what occurred in the major that we'll have to, of course, discuss here in a second, although some people don't seem willing to. So then Zuma said yesterday that as far as he had heard, aBeZy isn't getting dropped, he's not going to be going anywhere, so, aBeZy to stay, RCTs to stay, Hook to stay, I guess, and that then leaves us in a situation where, according to multiple sources, they are looking at options of benching iLLeY. Now, of course, we'll have to discuss in the coming minutes, if you bench iLLeY, who do you get instead? What's the maneuver there? Because iLLeY's been their best player, we'll see in a second, but also on one of the AR roles. I mean, effectively, right? I mean, aBeZy's been really on the SMG. Okay, in this game you can run a lot of 3 ARs, but that's where aBeZy's been inhabiting. Do you decide to put like aBeZy to the main, RCTs to like a kind of flex role they used to run for FaZe, for example, which could kind of work, and then, bring in another SMG? The issue is you bring in another SMG alongside Hook. Let's say a guy like Capsidal, because that's been discussed. He was recently dropped from Boston, one of the better options. But again, Capsidal and Hook SMG duo, there's not much, in terms of brain versus aim. It's definitely one way than the other, you know what I mean? It's the same reason why Boston decided to get rid of Cap instead of Asim, is because they wanted more, maybe, decision-making on the map. Cap and Hook sounds like a bit of a recipe for disaster SMG duo as far as I'm concerned, but the other options that Surge might have wanted to go for if they were to make a change like that are probably gone now. Maybe Surge haven't moved quickly enough, so the guys like Asim, who would have probably been a great candidate, he's now joined Boston. That's a done deal. Surge maybe have moved too slowly to get the guys they wanted, even if they were going to get rid of RCTs, which would, in my head, make the most sense, right? If you are going to make a move, taking out one of the ARs and bringing in an SMG, putting aBeZy to the main, and then keeping Hook around, the only player that really makes sense for is getting rid of RCTs if you want to look at it based on, not just based on the Lion Man cards, but, he's not been great as the RCTs for the last couple of years. This was really meant to be his bounce back chance, because leaves FaZe, goes to the Los Angeles Grillers, tough spot on LAG for sure during that last season, especially because the organization was like collapsing, the money was going down the drain, all this type of stuff. But this year, back on Seattle Surge with the team that he wanted to play with, apparently RCTs and iLLeY were basically going to be a team of 2 somewhere or another. So, this was meant to be the redemption year for a lot of these guys, RCTs included. Hasn't been that way so far, but he's going to maintain his spot, it seems. iLLeY has been, hands down, their most dominant force. I mean, the Search and Destroy has been really the only thing carrying them through. And if you look at the S&D numbers, aBeZy's been great, but iLLeY, I mean, he has basically the highest damage per round in the league for his role, has incredibly high kills per round as well, 1.22 KD in the mode, and he's holding his own in the respawns. They've actually been getting surprisingly slammed in the controls at 2 in 9, and hardpoint 7 in 13 isn't great either over the stage. But 11 in full Search and Destroy, that's enough to get you kind of deep in tournaments, and they got here to top 6. But during the event, iLLeY had so many crazy takeover moments, not just in Search, also in the respawns. The hardpoint they won an invasion against Ravens, iLLeY popped like a 4-piece or a crazy 3-piece over that like broken hill to break into that, bring the comeback, get the P5 rotation, win it on the P1 in the ends. Like, that was a masterclass, but iLLeY is now going to be out of the team. So there's a couple of explanations for this. Explanation 1, very unlikely, is that his comms, there's an actual performance-related expectation, in-game expectation, that his comms weren't good enough. He was saying, yo, 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 every time he was calling stuff out. If you guys, once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it during the Seattle comms. That's one relatively unlikely explanation. The more likely explanation is elsewhere, and I think it was kind of funny, right? As the Stocksman tweeted out, the decision stands out as the worst roster change of the year. He's been their best player. It's so puzzling to think who Seattle would even pick up to replace him. And as people like Joey Nubsy are saying, you're either trolling or a moron if you're tweeting about this rumored Seattle move like it is gameplay related. So I think it all comes back to this interview, right? And there's a good argument to say that if his teammates didn't force him to do this interview, if somebody else did this interview instead, iLLeY would probably still be on the team as it stands. But that is not the case, and maybe that's for the best in some ways, because if this is what we think it might be, and iLLeY's going through some difficulties behind the scenes, it might well be for the best that hopefully Seattle have made the decision to move iLLeY off the starting team to, to take care of iLLeY and to ensure that his health is, optimal and okay going forwards. People that are familiar with stories like this that emerge every so often will be aware of, the OpTic Maniac situation, for example, when he was, on several substances, going through rehab, and it almost cost him his life, right, Maniac? And thankfully he's all okay now after the ordeal that he went through for several years. And the concern of the community was, after we saw that interview with iLLeY, that is iLLeY okay? Is it just caffeine, as he said? And as Panda says, I'm sitting here reading people who know why this situation with Seattle is happening, saying that Surge is in the wrong because India is good, when as far as he's concerned, Surge is 100% correct to do what they're doing to, hopefully, at least, from my side, it looks like they're trying to take care of iLLeY and ensure that everything is okay. Because, yeah, a massive point of... It was a concern, right? This is the reason why I think that it's worth having the conversation, because people who saw that and were concerned for iLLeY's health, that was the primary point from the community. I don't think people were necessarily, you know, roasting iLLeY and whatever was going on. It was more so like, is this guy okay type thing. And maybe that's why this is kind of, well, the situation is occurring. He's now getting out of the team. At least it seems that way to me. Now, the other possibility on this, and actually there was a very interesting discussion here between ReeaL, the coach of the New York Subliners, and Drazah, kind of like former pro player. I think he's actually a head coach still for one of the teams in Challenge, as it says in his bio. So as he says, so funny. So Octane was talking about the caffeine usage and basically didn't want to make any accusations. That's totally fair enough. We don't want to make any accusations that, you know, cannot be backed up. But it's worth the conversation because it's a known problem within the esports landscape. It has been for, I mean, years, if not basically decades in some form or another. And we know that it's not healthy. And we know that it's a problem that does need to be addressed. So as Denzah says, he knows for a fact that half the league is prescribed and they have no problem getting past the tests. From what I've been told, they don't or can't even test the amount. People need to be held accountable. So that's just Denzah's point of view. But actually, ReeaL, a coach in the league, says this. They don't test for quantity. It's an issue, but it's swept under the rug. Anyone can get a prescription. Once they do, players load up on it. We're asking kids with a lack of discipline and routines to moderate and cycle their use. I mean, which is pretty crazy in and of itself. League needs to do more, but you know, I don't know what to do except outright ban it. So absolutely wild stuff, really, because that's the thing that I'd heard about, right? That they do some sort of testing for this, but it's not done in a way that really enforces anything, because as apparently the rotation says, leaked CDL documents have shown us that the CDL conduct oral tests and don't test for quantities of certain substances. So it gives them a yes-no, but if the player is prescribed, as apparently, especially in the States, it's rather easy to get prescribed, then it's just like, well, they've got a prescription and it's a yes, so fair enough, on you go. But the feeling is that if something's prescribed to deal with ADHD, shall we say, it should theoretically take you back to like a normal operating level rather than far beyond. So that's the issue, I guess, from the CDL side. And to be fair, even if they were to do like more in-depth testing, I don't know how easy it would be to get information on dosages and all that type of stuff. And the CDL's running dry on money anyway, and these kind of tests cost money, right? So it's not like we can be the NFL and go super hard on all this type of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really tough situation, right? But I think as ReeaL is trying to get across there and Denzah's trying to get across, like, this situation needs to be dealt with somehow, and hopefully Surge, I'm guessing what this is Surge benching iLLeY to help deal with that situation and, you know, help him recover maybe or whatever behind the scenes for a while before he can then potentially return. Or his like thumb injuries come back, but that seems pretty unlikely, especially given the way that he played this past weekend. The league themselves, you know, are not going to comment on this. They're not going to talk about the situation, I imagine, unless they've like, you know, shadow banned. But I just don't think that's the case, because based on what we're hearing about the testing, they wouldn't be able to come up with, you know, reasons to that extent as well. But I think, you know, it should be known that it's a problem. The CDL know it's a problem. The teams know it's a problem. The personalities, the players know it's a problem. So I don't think it helps personally to kind of sweep this stuff under the rug. And fair play to ReeaL actually having, you know, the bravery in some sense to talk about that as he did publicly as someone affiliated closely with a league team. The final thing to mention though, what are they going to do? And if iLLeY does return at some point, or even if iLLeY is fine, there is performance reasons, iLLeY could go to, you know, Vegas. That would make a lot of sense actually for Purge theoretically, but I don't think that's going to be happening. And they'll have to find somebody else. Ben J. Nassim talked about the fluidity of the Surge campaigns, exactly what they're going to plan to do going forwards. And, you know, Capsidal bringing in a booster to the flex might make sense, but a Hoop Capsidal SMG duo, while it has a lot of talent and might be their best option remaining, might not be the best in the long term. So I can't really see how this team gets better as a result of this, but I'm certainly hoping that iLLeY gets better based on the evidence we saw this past weekend. So very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.